Hello?
Hey Sarah, this is Stuart here at the Port of Newport Port Commission meeting.
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. We have you on speakerphone in front of the room, just about to get the meeting started.
Okay, cool.
Roger. Alrighty. So, 6 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order of the Port of Newport Regular Monthly Commission meeting. 6:01. I'll start off on the agenda. Any changes by the commissioners to the posted agenda?
No.
So noted. At this point, I want to open up the meeting to the first round of public comments. We have a slightly different process here for those that weren't aware of this. If you want to speak to a specific topic within the agenda, you're welcome to fill out a card. Karen, I believe they're back there. And then when that specific agenda item comes up, you'll have an opportunity to inject your comments during that time of the meeting, as opposed to simply being restricted to the beginning and end of the meeting. That being said, we can start off giving everybody the opportunity. 3 minutes. Any public comments at the beginning of the meeting? Anyone would like to make? Seeing none, we'll move on from there.
Stuart,
Yes.
new people that don't know the new guidelines.
Sure.
Filling it out right now. Would that work?
Absolutely, yeah. Let me take a few minutes so that people have a chance. It is kind of new to us, not trying to rush through anything, but it does give us people a better opportunity to, like I said, chime in while the topics are being discussed as opposed to afterwards. So, give everybody a minute or two here while we're doing that. Yeah.
So is that going to be like before the topic or after the topic or any time during the topic?
It'll be whenever I decide. How about that? But it will be discussed while we're in the course of it, getting aside. So it's new to me and us here too a little bit. So if you can bear with us, I think the important thing is that we'll be able to hear the topics or hear the comments while we're actually engaged in the discussions. So again, I see people feverishly writing, so we'll give them a couple minutes. 2 minutes. And I should mention too, Sarah Scamser, one of our commissioners, wasn't able to be here in person, so obviously that's who I have on the phone right now. All right, Cody, you just about there? Yeah. Roger that. All right. I think folks have had that opportunity, and here they come to me. Ship. Ship. Charboat rates. Just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay. All right.
I can keep those for you.
Yeah.
I'm your secretary.
That's true. All right, moving along. Next item on the agenda is the approving of the minutes for the regular commission meeting and the special commission meeting. Those were held April 24th and May 7th, respectively. Anyone have any issues with those, or do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the minutes and special use permits.
Second.
It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. We have a number of items here, or a number of folks wanting to begin that discussion or participate in that discussion. This is the petition regarding tall ship visits. So we have this in our packets. There's been quite a bit of discussion on this. Doug, do you want to prime us on this, of what the port's done at this point?
Well, I'll preface this with the fact that I've only been here 2.5 months, but I understand that before that, the fellowships came in for short periods of time, several days at a time, maybe a week, and typically the port did not ever, that I could find, charge them anything. They came in at no charge, and then they left, and that was it until next year. This year they've asked to stay for quite a bit longer, and 2 different time frames in 2 different months, or split over 3 months. And we basically told them that if they're going to be here that long, they needed to pay the standard mortgage rates that anyone else would pay, and they agreed to do that. They wanted to send packages to us. We told them it was going to cost them so much per package to send them to the port. They did that for a little while, and then they stopped. I think they found some other businesses along Bay that was willing to take them without charging. They wanted some parking permits for their people. We did not give them to them. We did not sell them any either, because those were just for the commercial fishermen. And that's basically what I saw. And it seemed I had a lot of feedback from both sides of the issue, like any issue, any major issue. And there were people that don't want to see the ships here, even in the harbor. To that extreme, there are people that want to see them elsewhere in the harbor from where they're berthing. And there are people that love to see them because they just feel that it's interesting for their families. So I heard all types of different sides.
So, but at this point, from the port's perspective, you signed a Port of Newport special use permit for them at this point.
We did. There were one thing they did last year. They shipped in gunpowder to the port, and we wanted a document there where we could make sure they weren't going to do that again, and that they would be basically asked to leave the port if they did that again. Mm-hmm. And the document also specified the specific dates that they would come in and any special terms, and so we followed the procedure for the special use permit.
We just approved, and I don't mean to be dominating this discussion, it's not just Doug and I. We just approved a couple of special use permits that were included in the packet here for us to review. Was this, I don't recall seeing this specifically in our packets in the past.
It's my understanding we put all of the special use permits through the same process. Is that correct, Karen?
But was this brought before the commission? And because I went back through my notes.
I don't specifically recall. Now, the resolution doesn't call for commission approval, but as a general rule, they have to put in the meeting packet.
Yeah, because like I said, I went at least back through mine, and I don't recall seeing this specific one in there.
It may not have been as a time issue.
Okay.
Was there a time issue that needed to be signed without our approval, Doug?
It was my understanding it didn't need your approval. I was told.
Well, I'm just looking at these other ones for the Boy Scouts needed one, so I'm just
No,
wondering.
I was told that we put them in here.
I'm not done, Doug.
I'm sorry.
So we have a much shorter one with less impact to uses of the port, and it's going through us, and we have one that is going to basically impact our users and our facilities for basically 4 weeks and cause a lot of consternation, a lot of comment, and a lot of angst in the community. And I'm just wondering why that wasn't brought to our attention.
One of the reasons was I was only here for 2 weeks at the time, and it was my understanding from talking to staff that the commissioners don't typically approve those, that they're put on the agenda for your information, and that's why they're put on here. And I was under the understanding that it did not need the approval of the commission.
Well, I mean, I think it's important going forward to be crystal clear on this, that these things, they all should be. If this one wasn't, it definitely should have been on the agenda. Like I said, when I went back, I didn't see it. So just so we're clear, whether or not the Port Commission all has to, you don't have a resolution or a vote on it, but it needs to be, especially on something like this, to have it brought to the commission and the public's attention of what we're doing with something like this, given its impact.
No, there's absolutely no subterfuge involved, and I'd only been here 2 weeks. I didn't have time to form my own agenda yet. So, rest assured that it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't hidden from the public.
Well, we have a number of concerns that have been expressed here, and I think it might be the right opportunity to hear and a presentation a little bit more about the specific concerns we have. So I think I'd like to start out with Don on this, if you wouldn't mind making.
Yeah, I can get a couple of points there.
Yep.
Got those petitions. Got a couple of petitions that fishermen signed that just handing out to you guys, whatever. I want to thank the commission for this opportunity here, and the court also. For those that are here and afar, Sarah.
I hear you.
Good on, good on. One of the things is why me, okay? Everybody's asked me that, and I just have to make it clear that I'm one of the few people that even knew what was coming down the pipe. And only because of the tall ships that got over us way back when. I think we mentioned that in the last meeting. And so that's how that all came down. And they originally in that whole July thing, and that's where I was back in April 16th. We talked to Doug April 16th about our concerns. And
I'm not able to hear all of this.
talked to Doug on April 16th. That better?
Don, would you mind coming up here? I'm sorry to have you do that, but I think it'd be easier for Sarah to hear.
Gonna make me leave, friend.
Yeah.
Your wingman and your record. Oh, nuts! Have we started? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyway, Fran and I spoke to Doug on April 16th.
Much better.
Thank you, sir. Anyway, about our concerns about the tall ships. I mean, April was pretty much a done deal. I mean, they're on their way. They're here. But July, we had big concerns, and you guys have got to read about a bunch of them from tons of user groups, which I'd like to hear somebody that's objected to this, that you mentioned. I mean, just for the fun and giggles, because you can hold it.
I have had one person send an email and object.
Yeah, we got thousands here. And so that's my big thing. And the special use permit I was a commissioner for 13 years. Any little piece of a puzzle that goes on in the port, you've only got 5 losses. They've got over 10,000, okay, to answer to. And so
A little slightly over 5,000 in the Port District.
we had about 10.
There's 10,000 in City
In the
Mutual.
city, yes.
Let's support this now.
Anyway, it doesn't matter, a bunch. That their butts are hanging on the line. And that whole transparency of these things means a lot. And I had to go through that learning curve. And some of this stuff that I was trying to talk to you about back then was all part of it and giving you some insight. And we gave you the opportunity to also speak to us at any time. It's just like a lot of people that you can speak to, and you can learn a lot of the things instead of have to make them. I've only been here for 2 weeks, you know. That's why you ask questions. But anyway, the whole permit handled poorly. Transparency comes with being a commissioner, and it's very important that you as the manager share anything and everything. Could have been a snail that walked across Bay Boulevard. It could be an issue if you hide it. Okay? So ever in a question, please ask. I kind of move on here to some things that I highlighted here, and that is within this whole procedure and the things that we have is the leasees that are affected by this directly on Port Dock 3. One is Cody. That's been he's been there as long as I can remember, and an awesome place to send people to purchase seafood. It's always the freshest. He's got the best reputation. He's got returning customers. It goes on and on. And I know for a fact that business comes to it. That's one lease that's throwing $5,800 a year into the port's coffers. And it's not like he makes anything except for in those peak months. He's got some wing months where there's some tuna hanging out down there, and there's people coming for that as it's hitting the market in the feast, if you can see. Pack Shrimp, I mean Pacific Shrimp, meaning because it's right next door. It seems to me that's the lease that the port has with them for the driveway. Aren't they the leasee for their driveway right there? Way back in the...
You have a couple of leases.
You know, well, that one, that's primarily where the trucks back in. David?
Yes, there's a lease there.
Yeah, well, that's what the one I thought. So, I mean, when the tall ships are here, and we're about to start huge. We've got whiting coming in and out of there. We got trucks backing in there every day. I say we because it's the baby. It's all of us. And they don't need people leaning on the hubcaps, okay? And if you saw it in April, it was pretty serious cluster right there. Out of the driveway, I mean, they were bleeding over from both sides. Anyway, small piece of the puzzle. Another leasee that's about $12,000 a year, some change, and that's the charter fishing office that's down there next to me. Well, that's the only 3 leases that I actually have that I could say were directly affected. But once again, we only started. We got a little bit of icing on the cake here. We didn't even get down into the cake. So this is just some footwork that we had a little time to do. But they spend $12,000 a year. Hey, if it's the same impact in parking that we had before, there's nobody going to park on certain days. So if they get a second trip out that day, well, they're just going to say, hey, we could find a place to park. You know? And you can go down through all the different people that are on here that we've listed, and hopefully it was a good read for you. And I hope that you can resolve it, because I personally, I feel it went sideways, and there's a lot of other people that I know feel the same way. I never get time to put anything in. And this is my partner, friend, and may she speak, Stuart, just because I'm not in this side.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug, members of the staff and Port Commission. One of the things that caught our eye or ear early on in this process was, as Don mentioned, we were able to understand some of the plans with the tall ships before anybody else in the community knew about it, because they approached us to help develop some marine science programs along with the aquarium to not only create programs but to staff them from our 2 entities. And then to come back in April and July during the peak season where we really didn't need to have that type of addition to our community when we already have those services that are there and being filled. And you'll notice the parts under the aquarium where I talked about, again, community neighbors mean that the aquarium needs every ticket and every school bus that walks through the door, because they're a year-round entity that is land-based, and they pay... I can't begin to start with that. Same thing with us. We're a private enterprise, but we're land-based. We pay year-round property taxes. Our main bank is made in July and August. 40% of our income is made in July. And if we start having that income stream eroded by outside sources, that will severely limit our ability to hire family wage jobs for our business. It will limit our ability to continue what we love to do, which is to be a leader with fundraising in our community that ripples out and benefits everybody, right down from our last weekend when we did a cruise for the Maritime Museum. So small examples of that as a stakeholder on this neighborhood watch is very real. When you start from the Embarcadero and go all the way to the Coast Guard Station, every one of those doorsteps has a similar story. And July and August, we are already at capacity. We're at a tipping point. And we as neighbors really work hard to accommodate each other, because we know that we've all got skin in the game during July especially. A huge part of this for me, after years of representing marketing and tourism in this community with my volunteer work at the Chamber of Commerce and with my own business focus, is that we are heading for a huge black eye of visitor perception. If we have people who, we all know we have people who come here every year, some of them are fourth generation that come from Idaho, that come to my business and say, we'll see you next year. If they arrive in the middle of a 3-week parking crisis, they're going to make that assessment just like all of us do when we travel and say, this place is topped out. This is no fun anymore. There's no place to park. Let's go find a place on the coast where we can get in and enjoy being with our family, because that's what we came to Newport for. So I think that that's a very real perception. And again, our Chamber of Commerce has done an incredible job all of these years that I've been privy to working with them, of having a very long time tradition of supporting events and building events in the shoulder seasons that give the whole community more of a rounded out economic development base. And they are also active stewards of visitor perception. And as I noted in the packet, Newport loves to promote an authentic Oregon working waterfront and port. We're one of the last few in Oregon. So if we have these tall ships come in that are shooting cannons and doing Johnny Depp stuff, which doesn't really have any historical connections to the Oregon coast, that's a whole different story. Again, they're educational programs, and they're beautiful, beautiful ships that I love like everyone else, would be welcomed if they were here in one of those shoulder seasons to bring this wonderful draw of people who sign up and go out on that, as well as having space for local people to be able to park wherever they're at and enjoy those services too. As Don mentioned, we noted that the people affected are going to be our fishing community, including our processing plants. We watched in April fish trucks sitting by the curb and waiting to get out onto the street to move product because the gridlock of traffic on Bay Boulevard would not let anyone come or go. They were also worried about getting off of that street. It was kind of like the Eclipse line that was in Central Oregon last year. Nobody in those 26 miles approaching the event saw any business because nobody wanted to get out of line. So it's kind of a similar scenario here because we're talking about 3 weeks of a peak season. Our Sea Grant people, wonderful Katie Jacobson, who's got 3 dock walks set up in July, which will potentially limit the visitors coming to that because they'll arrive and go, oh, wow, well, maybe next year. Again, Chelsea Rose that works there very hardest to not only have a great product, but to continually ripple what we love to support, and that is sustainable fishing practices. In a harbor that is an innovator in that, with our wonderful friends at Foul Weather Trawl and all of our fishermen that adopt. And again, that's a direct one-on-one benefit that they share with the visitor. I could continue to go along. Newport Police Department. How about public safety with pedestrians, parking turnover signages? Our city of Newport, which is working right now on a parking plan, but it's not in position. While those of us who are land-based continue to pay into our in lieu of parking fund, versus not feeling really comfortable with an entity coming in from out of state who doesn't pay any Oregon taxes and leaves with whatever they make while they're here, which is not including any kind of parking fees. And again, there's the other side of me that wants to address the Black Cannon gunpowder demonstrations. Again, exciting Universal Studios enactments. Those are cool. I love them. When our kids were little, they loved them. It doesn't have a real effect on any type of Oregon coast history. I think in those days, our guys were kind of like skinny, starving Lewis and Clarks that weren't running around shooting cannons at each other. But they're certainly exciting, but one of the concerns that I have as a marine educator is any type of potential acoustic impact that those units might have on our sea and shorebirds that nest in Yucuna Bay, as well as a very fragile balance of Pacific foraging gray whales that are just off of our coastline, primarily during July through September in numbers, who've never had this kind of interaction during the season on the ocean where they're doing their feeding. And again, there's just a lot of stakeholders that have a lot of concerns, and I just want to share that and ask you guys to consider either exercising your 30-day prior moorage permit which has got an escape clause in it. And that was one of the primary reasons that we went to Doug very early, shortly after he was hired, to say, hey, you've got this 30-day, we can revoke this thing here. Can we start talking about it now while we have time? And then 3 days later, he implemented a special use permit without, it appears to be any discussion with the commission. So that's a puzzler for us to take a look at that. But if there's not an opportunity for that clause to be implemented, then if nothing else, we'd love to have you consider moving this business's operations to either the South Beach Marina or the terminal, where there is more than adequate parking for their audience that they've sold tickets to. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think what I'd like to do is hear, if it's all right with the commission, I'll hear from a few more of the comments, and then the commission will have a chance to chime in. Is that okay with you, Sarah?
Sounds good.
Okay. Cody, did you want to say something on the topic?
Yeah. I kind of caught wind of this, the whole deal kind of late, so I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be, but over the last, however long they've been coming, we've come to get used to it. It drops our business down like a rock. And we've come to accept it. It's no big deal. They're kind of cool. And we've kind of changed our business around to more work in about 4 to 4.5 months of the year. July being one of those months with bringing in a huge part of our income and our gross revenue. If these tall ships are there through July, it will totally affect us. It takes up so much of the dock, as we already do with so many customers coming down anymore. We take up a huge part of the dock, and it's hard for fishermen, as it is. Getting these tall ships down here is going to be, for 3 weeks, it's going to be crazy. With parking and just use on the dock. The way we do things, we move stuff from boats to our dock. We have to use the dock to do what we do. That's going to also affect us. In a lot of ways, this is going to affect us in a bad way, I think. Yeah, but it seems like there's other places that these tall ships could go, possibly. I mean, I think they're a great part of this town for the few days that they're here. It's great. July, sure, this is not on Port Dock 3. That's just absolutely asking for, it's going to hurt us. We've got a business lease with you guys. We've done our best to do anything we can to make what we have today. July is terrible timing. That's all I got for now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you for that. Walter, do we have anyone else on this topic?
Fran, do you want to consider what you just told us part of your comment, or do you want to add some more?
Do you have anything else you want to add, Fran?
One thing that kind of caught my ear there was what Cody was saying, July. Why are they here in Newport in July? They're from the state of Washington. They have a whole coastline up there. They have other ports of call that they go into. And yet in that first initial meeting that I had with them on teleconference, I asked them, why are you planning on coming back in July? And their program developer said, our heritage-focused sales are currently stagnant in revenue. So that's our answer as a community of why they're coming here in July. And as a former member of the commercial fishing community, it would be to me like the analogy of saying, I've paid for everything to fish Bristol Bay and buy these permits, and you can come in and fish my fish for July, but you don't have to have a permit, just go for it. So it's not, again, a comfortable feeling, and I don't think it's good economic development to launch a plan that has had insufficient analysis and not enough stakeholders to come to the table who have expert answers for a lot of these questions that we're posing in a hasty way. And I do have, if you don't mind, I'll submit this, Stuart, it's a letter that came in from Janet Webster. It's kind of late in the day. Did you get that?
Yeah, we got it. We do have a copy of that.
And then I'd be happy to give you copies of the different signatures. Again, just a tip of the iceberg of people who even knew there was a petition to share their concern.
Thank you for all of this, and I'll pass this for the commissioners to look at, and then ultimately pass it off to Karen to include in the minutes. That's all
And
right.
that's just a tip of the iceberg. There's another petition out there that I haven't gotten hands back. And there was not a fisherman that, it's like, where's it at? I'll sign, you know.
Sure.
I didn't have time to go run everyone down.
Well, I will say I very much appreciate people making these comments here. I'd like to see what the commission, if the commissioners have anything they want to right out of the gate chat about, and then of course give the port staff a little time as well. What, anything jumping out at you, Jeff?
Well, it looks like there's moving forward 2 issues. The first, of course, is what about July? The second issue is long-term. What type of procedure do we handle this, and how do we vet it? How do we decide timing, and what's the procedure? But the more immediate need is July, and kind of heard a pretty compelling case here. So I think we probably need to focus on July right now and figure out what's best for the port and the community. So.
Sarah, do you have anything that jumps out at you here?
I pretty much agree with Jeff. There is a long-term thing we got to figure out, but it started out as one of those gentlemen's agreement for a 3-day thing and Memorial Day, and without any rules, it just has blossomed. And I think that, it's not blame. The port was understaffed in many directions, and I think that if we have a timely solution within the permit, I had read about the 30-day thing, I think that would be a good option.
Okay. Walter?
So I just need to know, where is this special use permit? I've never seen it. I've heard it referenced. It's not in our packets. It's been signed and everything. I would hope that we would have at least had a chance to see it, and the people in the public also. And this isn't our normal document format, is it? Is it? Okay.
There were some terms added to this specific to that, and it is essential.
This is the first time I've seen it. I know we got a letter from Fran Recht also, and Fran Matthews also sent some stuff in. I hope that stuff gets put in for the packet so the people that were here can see what it was that we're referencing for the whole time. We have a document in our packet that says that our commercial marina is already at capacity. I don't see how we could be justifiably saying that we can take up all of Port Dock 3 during the busiest time of the year. I think that was a poor decision. David's in the back. I think when David was on the commission, one of the things we always talked about was that the commercial marina was for commercial fishing boats and not for tourist attractions. We made an exception for those boats at the time. We have a working waterfront. We have a very busy fishing fleet here. I don't think that those spots should be used for a tourist-based business. Shoulder season, that's fine. We've also got a message from you about non-working vessels in the commercial marina. If we're that strapped for space, I think we should move them somewhere else. I just also want to tell you that Cody I called him some other issues, and he also gave me some more comments that his business would be severely impacted. And I send people to Cody. I've sent him to Cody for the last 7-8 years, as long as he's been there. And I don't want to send those people down there and have them say that they can't get to his business. So it would be my suggestion that we either rescind the agreement or bring them over here to South Beach. There's plenty of parking. We could work out something with the aquarium. There's overflow over there. I'm sure Rogue would like to have those boats there being looked at out of their windows, but I don't see our commercial marina as a fit for this venue at this time.
So what about those thoughts? Practicality of addressing at least their safe navigation in South Beach. Aaron, any thoughts on that? You think we can get them in over there?
So the Wine Chief draws 5-6, and the Lady Washington draws 11 foot. So I don't think the Lady Washington wouldn't be a good idea to bring in here. I don't believe it. We just had the channel dredged, but I got some soundings from the Army Corps that their survey boat did. These are a little bit old, but the most detailed ones that I have that go over here toward the road, it shows right around 9 foot in there, mean low water. So that means
Tidally restricted.
Yeah, a couple times a day it'd be sitting on the bottom. It's going to be sitting at the dock, and then I wouldn't transit through there. Getting through the channel wouldn't be too much of a problem, but so I would say that, like I said, the Lady Washington would be out. The Hawaiian Chieftain can fit in there. We're kind of in that same spot though, where April's one thing. If you pulled them in here in April, we would have plenty of spaces where we'd be able to moor them. But this is going to be July, so it's the busiest time over here. So it's going to be either J dock or it'd have to be down on the service dock, and they could load at the service dock. I haven't talked to them about any of this. I don't know how comfortable they are bringing that thing down here all the way to that, because it's going to be, it'll be narrow.
Down to here to the road?
Yeah. So I don't know how they do turning it around inside of there. If they'd be all right with that, I don't know. But
yeah, but they could only get one of the two in there regardless, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely. But that'd be up to them to figure out.
The other option that Fran mentioned that we discussed as well was putting them at the international terminal. Of course, we have a lot more wharfage space there, and the timing is very good since we don't have a particular fishery that's bringing in a lot of product at that point in time. So we could put them out there, but we have serious concerns about safety of loading them on and off the ships there. And I think if we moored them there, that would be okay. But we would have to have them swing by 5 probably and load and unload on their way to do their thing.
Yeah, that doesn't get at the parking issue. That's really the meat of the potato here. I'm reading that special use permit here. There's a statement here that agrees to the designated moorage at Port Dock 3 subject to the arrangement with the harbor master. How would you interpret that? Or maybe I could look at down that table a little bit further.
I think you have multiple options. Another one is I keep hearing about the 30-day option. But
specific to this, I suppose, that statement that says subject to the arrangements with the harbor master, would that preclude this lease? I mean, essentially, are we saying you can come here in July if there's space and it fits with the harbor master's assessment of the situation, but there's an opportunity here to say we don't have space. Is that how you guys would interpret that?
That is one definite interpretation. Another is in the item I passed to Walter there. It doesn't say 30 days, it says at any time. So at any time, you could make a decision to do otherwise, I believe.
So looking at, it sounds like South Beach really isn't a practical option for both boats, and I'm assuming they'll want to be together.
Stuart, can I bring one point in to Eric?
Sure.
The transient dock, what's wrong with that?
So we can do up to 10 days on the transient dock. We've gotten in trouble before because it's used. OSMB funds have been used there, so we can't moor somebody there longer than 10 days or state of get after us for it. But you do have 10 days there. So
okay, I had no idea that. But there's plenty of water. They can turn there. They've been there in the past. They offload. They do they use the dump site for the school service there. They get fuel there, so they don't have a problem there. And they use a skiff to move the boat, so they don't use the 2 screws they got on the Hawaiian Chieftain to even drive the thing. They use a skiff to drive it. It's like, hey, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they could put a tender in.
I had no idea about the 10 days.
Is that for the transient dock or for the service dock?
It's for the transient dock. It's for J dock.
So, I guess getting back to this, at this point, I mean, we've committed to this on some level to accommodate them. The question is there a better place in the port to put them? that doesn't have the parking and the impacts to these businesses that we've heard. International terminal seems like it's a little bit of an issue as it relates to getting folks safely on and off the boat.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
And I have to confess, I haven't participated in the tall ship cruises lately, so I'm not exactly sure how they get folks on and off. But any other thoughts, Aaron, from your perspective on where else we might put these? I mean, is the transient dock a viable opportunity or option?
That'd be the only problem I have to figure out is, like I said, we're not supposed to have them there longer. And aside from the fact that it is July, like I said, so it's going to be pretty full over there. So if we were going to get somebody who's going to complain because we got somebody tied up there longer than 10 days, that would be the time that somebody's going to complain.
But is this a little bit of a scheduling issue where perhaps we could have, as I think it was suggested, maybe they come here during their tours, do their onboarding and offloading of folks, and then more long term, their moorage in a formal sense moves out to the international terminal, knowing that the harbor master is really going to have to work on scheduling to ensure that there's space available and those kinds of things? Is that even practical?
It's going to be a tight squeeze, but it's possible that we can do that for the Hawaiian chieftain. But I don't think it's a good idea to bring an 11-foot draft boat into South Beach at all. So I would cut the Lady Washington out of that.
Mm-hmm. What did they dredge the channel to?
I think it was 10 foot if I remember right. So, and like I said, the best image I got of South Beach is from 16, so it's old. And it goes all the way up into here, up by the old boat ramp. So, you get that far in there, and I wouldn't recommend it at all.
So again, any other options that you see at this point for accommodating them in somewhere other than Port Dock 3?
I feel like we're going to have the same issue anywhere in the commercial marina, basically. We have similar issues in South Beach, although we've got this entire stretch of the service dock down here that doesn't get used that much. But the reason why it doesn't get used that much is because it's not a regular stretch of dock. You know, the dock rods themselves, when you walk on it, parts of it are not connected. So, but people use it from time to time still, and that might work. The only other problem I thought of, and again, I haven't talked to these people, so I don't know. So you got these yard arms, so if they, they're beamier up high than they are down at the gunnel. So I would suppose that they're going to need to swing their yard arms lengthwise. That way they don't cause problems up against the road, the road's built or anything like that. But I suppose it's possible.
Yeah, but it's like I said, one of them, it's a non-issue. They can't get in there.
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
Any other thoughts, Commissioner-wise?
I thought that I heard in talking to Don one day that, and I didn't look at their website, but it was something that they kind of canceled out at the other ports, or are they going to the ports that they usually do go to besides Newport, or are they concentrating just on Newport because of this opportunity, or maybe clarification on that?
Sarah, they do have a banner on their website that says all cruises subject to change. So I think that this is part of it in the original notes that we submitted to the commission. As Don Mann pointed out, Florida Cascade Locks would not allow them in other than a 72-hour exposure because of their lack of infrastructure, of extra infrastructure. So it would be interesting to hear what other ports have to say about their moorage. Why are they here in Newport instead of someplace that's got a bigger tourism population base, another harbor?
It's pretty black and white. This is the honey hole, and if you look on the website, they're not visiting any other Oregon ports.
Where does it say in this that about the 30 days?
I didn't see the 30 days. I see they at any time.
Where does it say at any time?
Item 4.
Item 4 says, the port reserves the right to alter or amend the terms and conditions of this permit at any time. Well, I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't.
I just had two things to add there that may be helpful. I noticed on their website, I believe, when I looked at this initially, that they had been going into Astoria, and this year they completely bypassed Astoria for whatever reason. And I didn't call the port manager there, or maybe I should have to find out. The other is they've been headquartered for ages up in Washington, and it happens that Aaron was stationed at that port and has some firsthand knowledge of that. Maybe there's something there that he could interject that would be helpful too.
Westport compared to Newport, I think Newport is probably where more people will come out to. I don't know. Throughout the summertime, they would usually come in up there. They didn't seem. I mean, they would do their. They would shoot off cannons out there between the jetty tips pretty frequently. I don't know. That's what they did up there. They seem to be gone toward the bulk of the summertime. At the end of the summer, they would go elsewhere. I don't know where they went. I suppose they probably came down this way or something.
Well,
They have been wintering down in California.
okay. I think in this, we had the flexibility in this special use permit that was signed to make a change. And I think it's important, from my perspective, that the commission balance all the different stakeholders, and tourism is clearly a stakeholder. However, I think the place, and if I would consider this almost exclusively tourism, I think putting it right in the middle of a busy summer where we also have pressures on the commercial fishing industry is probably not the best place for them. I think I think the idea of balancing this out a little bit more, as people were talking about on the shoulder seasons, if you will, makes more sense and fits better with our community and the commercial industry that we have here. I think what the next, if we go down that road, I think the next question is, okay, then when? But my feeling is that sooner rather than later, and I don't want to mandate this because it's not my position to do so, but I would like to see if there's some universal acceptance of this within the commission to have either the GM or the operations manager or both reach out to these guys about the opportunity for an alternate time, more in September, perhaps. Maybe we can catch the tail end of things, of the summer end of things, and look to modify this. And again, predicated on the idea that we just don't have the space. We're just not that big. We don't want to kick them out and close the door to a potential revenue stream of sorts. They do bring business here. People come here to enjoy the pirates. But again, it's a question of timing. So my feeling is that, or my recommendation, if the commission is accepting of this, that we interface with these guys sooner rather than later so they can make an alternate plan, see if they offer up a time more in September where they could come up and spend the same amount of time, and see if that would work for them. Sarah, thoughts?
I think you articulated it well, that we don't want to they do bring in business, and some people, I'm sure, are happy to see them. It's just, this is a working waterfront. It's a bad spot for them, and I think you're right. It was a surprise. It wasn't something that we had much time to talk about, but I do agree that we should reach out to them and let them know that we just don't have the space, and it's a very busy time for our commercial fishermen. But we don't want to shut the door on them either. So I think that the September thing would be worth looking at, and maybe get some stakeholders together to talk to them about things like that, or at least inform us at the commission or the port level what their recommendations are. I think it's time to outreach on some of the stakeholders to decide another date.
Sarah, to that point, is this something, as the liaison to the user group, that you could reach out to the chair of that group and see if they have a recommendation and be able to provide that in a fairly short order to the port office if there was a time period?
Tentatively, we're scheduling a meeting for the 11th, so we could put that on that agenda, or I could certainly contact the president of the group and the chairman, rather, and to see,
I mean,
It's always difficult to outreach to the group because of the meetings laws, that it would be best at a meeting, I think, on an agenda item.
sure. But I guess I want us to have a little bit of a cohesive plan to chat with these guys about, and I think getting input from that group is arguably one of the reasons why they're there, is to get that. If that group in whatever form can at least provide some thoughts or recommendations on when a time that would have a reduced impact from the commercial
Right,
and
because the
fishing industry,
whole,
that would be helpful.
that's why it's nice to have the 11 sectors of the fisheries, because I don't know that much about it. I think tuna, you never know, it could be August, but I don't know. Walter, you might know a little bit more about tuna. This September seems to be a better time, the weather's still good.
I mean,
That is a pretty busy time for tuna to be coming in. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people.
And halibut openers in South Beach, and
Yeah, well, as far as tuna, if they're going to be in the commercial marina, that would be a pretty busy time for the Chelsea Rose also.
yeah, especially for the Chelsea Rose and all of the dockside, and the walks on the dock, and
Yeah.
so it just, we don't want to, I just think that it is a space issue and commercial fishing and the working waterfront, and hopefully they will understand our needs.
well, I think it would still be helpful to get at least a recommendation from that group. Sarah, if you
Yeah, I'd be happy to outreach.
that'd be great. And if on that, whatever information you get back, whether that's at the meeting or even before, if you could share that with the port
No, I'm
office
not gonna
and the
share it.
commission, would be great.
Okay.
You can pass it around to us. Jeff, any other thoughts on this?
I agree with what you said and what Sarah said about stakeholders, and also maybe discussing with the Tall Ship group about maybe reasons why, and just laying groundwork for the future on working together to try to figure out times that work for both groups.
And I think that's an important point. We're not trying to exclude anybody here. We're just trying to balance out everybody's schedules and needs as best we can.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Walter, anything else?
No, July is not a good time for them to be here, but in the shoulder season, let's see if we can get them in here.
Okay. So I guess at this point, Doug, it's however you'd like to handle that. If you want to reach out to them and say, we'll let them know about where we might have more flexibility to reschedule, or if you want to wait until you have a little more information from...
I'd rather not wait. I'll go tomorrow and take this up.
And you can tell them we're looking more towards the end of the summer, early fall, and it'll be a better opportunity for them, and we'll get back to them on more specific time. Good? Okay.
You got plenty going on. Can I say one more thing, Stuart?
You're pushing it, man.
I know I am.
All right.
So
go
here's
ahead.
the scoop, and Aaron could look at this. Hey, when we originally, talked to Doug, on their website, they were coming for 2 weeks in July. By the time you signed that permit, it came out to 3 weeks, a grand total of 40 days between the two boats. Well, if you can tie them to transient dock for 10 days, that's getting pretty close to 2 weeks. The other thing is, tide-wise, they don't sail, but in the evening, and then one afternoon cruise. And since I got issues with the tide right in my little hole, I can guarantee you all the minus tides are in the morning. And we've been getting stuck on that hump for 100 years, okay, with any displacement coming in. And they've been turning and burning right there forever. So they can do it. And that's my last words, I think.
Well, but it is a good point. I mean, I think the discussion will ultimately involve Aaron, too, in terms of water depths and scheduling and the harbor masters as well, so when it comes down to it. But most importantly, Doug, I think you got a little direction here to reach out to them, let them know we're just full.
That's all I can ask for. You got policy, I have a policy, I'll implement it.
Great. Okay. I think we should continue the agenda. Next item on the agenda is new business. Special Districts Association of Oregon, Board Practices and Assessment. Thoughts on this?
I actually would like to have Karen address that. Are you comfortable doing that, Karen?
Well, what was provided in the packet was the pamphlet that describes the program. It is a self-assessment that's guided by SBA, where you discuss among yourselves what they consider the key points of effective commission operation. And I'm sure Walter could talk about it a little more too, because he had been through it before.
Yeah. No, it's a very useful process, especially with new commissioners. I think it's something that would be a really good thing for us to talk out and get some advice from special districts and see how things are going. So I would readily think, advise us to do this.
It also gives a discount on insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, we discussed this once before and
Yeah.
looked through it. It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I think especially
Yeah, I remember that.
especially with the new commissioner coming online here, it seems like that would be the opportune time to do this. Karen, what do we need to move forward with it? Do we make a reservation of sorts, or how?
Rich Dunkel had said before, it's like at least 2 months
Mm-hmm.
kind of headway to schedule it, so we might want to talk to him now.
Agreed. If you don't mind, if you could reach out to them, let them know that we're, as a board, definitely interested in this and we'd like to pursue it. Great. Thank you. Any other new business? Anything else anybody'd like to add at this point? I'm going to move on to old business items previously removed from the consent calendar. I don't think we had any. Resolution 2018 authorizing the transfer of previously appointed funds to cover the remaining costs for the NOAA recreational access floating dock. Again, this was in our packet. I didn't mean to. Support staff, go.
That's fine. I think on this one, I'll ask Mark, our supervisor for the finance, to throw his 2 cents in.
So last fiscal year, 16-17, there was a capital project that was approved and budgeted for this NOAA recreational access floating dock. That project started in June of last year, so there was roughly $5,000 that was spent on the project, and the rest of the project was completed this fiscal year. But that project wasn't rebudgeted for. So there's a shortfall in the NOAA capital outlay object classification, and this resolution then will move funds from contingency to capital outlay to cover the costs of
Are they leaving?
part of that project this year.
I don't want it.
It spanned 2 years, but the bulk of the project was done this year.
I could,
I might interject, it's not written in this document, but in our audited financials for last year, this was the one item that the auditor flagged and said needed to be addressed. And so we're doing that.
Understood. Anyone on the commission have any questions about this? Sarah, any comment on this?
No, it was a resolution that was the difference. We had already discussed this at another meeting, I think.
I believe we've discussed it. Yeah. This has to do with the mitigation stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Do you need a formal resolution from the commission at this point? And so do I have a motion to accept this resolution number 2018-08 as written?
I move that we accept resolution number 2018-08.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Resolution passes. Thank you. Thanks for the update.
Mr. President,
That's me.
can you hear me? Anyway, the sun is setting on my last gathering with the family, and I wanted to definitely hang in there for the votes, but I think I'll be signing off.
Appreciate any feedback on the
Understood.
rates.
Sarah, did you have anything in particular, if I can jump ahead, for any flexibility we can offer you, and appreciate you calling in? Is there anything in particular in the agenda as written that you wanted to chime in on at this point?
No, because the fire burglary detection for the 2 International Terminal buildings is one that is ours, and I would have a conflict there anyway.
Okay.
And I think it's just safety first. I have no issues with this. The candidate applications for the vacant port commission position number 5 has been received. I've read them, so I'm up to speed on that. I believe my only question is if we have a meeting scheduled. Was that for the 4th that we're going to
That's right.
do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it's a beautiful evening, and the family is gathered on the beach, so I will sign off.
Just real quick, before you jump off, we do have the topic of the rates, fees, and charges on here. If you
Is
have
that
any,
an action item?
it's for information and discussion if need be. There's no action going to be taken at this time, but I'll reiterate again, if you have any comments or adjustments, you should either make those known or forward anything to the port office.
You know, I will be back on Thursday, and that would be a top priority for me, and I hope that suffices. If you think I should hang on to that, I certainly could.
Well, like I said, you'll have another. We'll make sure that you have an opportunity to provide
I've
those.
read the rates as they stand at this point, and I just see some adjustment, but I think that's going to come from the stakeholders in the user group. And again, I don't know timing on this with the budget committee meetings, but we are hoping to plan an 11th meeting for the user group, and that again would be the good venue for better input than I can give at this point.
We might have the budget meeting before that.
No, we aren't, because I won't be here.
Okay.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just I'll hang on
right, well,
for that.
We'll move along then. And
All right.
if you drop off, no reason to mention
If you
anything.
don't hear from me,
Yeah.
something must have happened
Understood.
at my end. All right.
It does.
I'll hang in there.
Things happen. So, let's see here. So, item C we have here. Next item on the next item on the agenda right now is the resolution 21807, setting rates, fees, and charges. So again, just what we reiterated here. There's no vote going to be taking place at this time, but port staff and the commission wanted to ensure that everyone had an opportunity to continue to review these things. I will ask the commissioners if they had any comments that they felt they wanted to make now at this point, knowing that we're getting to the bottom of the spiral here. At some point we are going to have to ratify these things, most likely at the next budget meeting, but I'll open that up. Jeff, was there anything in particular that you'd want to call out, or any questions that you have at this point?
Well, I have a potential conflict of interest as my father-in-law owns 2 commercial vessels that are subject to port rates. I'll just comment on the process as it relates to the process itself and the budget cycle. And that is, we heard from the meeting, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of input on this issue. And I know there's certainly a time frame we want the budget that needs to be carried out in, and I would hate to see something rush through for the sake of the budget before we've really given this the process it deserves. There's a lot of strong feeling on this, so from that standpoint, I'd like to see the process play out and the stakeholders be able to have the input and discussion, questions answered, that type of thing. So that's my main comment.
Okay. Walter?
I'm going to echo what Jeff said. Being part of the commission for many, many years now, if there was ever to have something like this come in front of the public, it should have been done in January. I know you just got here in March, Doug, and with some input from us, I think we probably could have done this a lot better Right now, I can't support this budget document, and I've said in the past, if we need to do something, I would support a 5% increase across the board. We did a 3% last year, and after further input from the users, we could do a contingency budget. I think that would be the best way to do this. What you don't see, what you don't hear, we hear from the users. I hear it from the commercial users. I heard from the recreational users. We have some here in the audience. This needed to have been done in a longer process. If we were to move forward with this, I've given you my comments. 5% with 5% with a contingency with later increases after it's been vetted through our users. That's the best way I think we can go forward. Those are my comments.
Sarah?
I do have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's been such a grind. I appreciate all the work and the budget, and I'm tending to agree with Walter that it's going to be the better part of valor to do that. I think it's been too much too quick, and I don't know enough about the budget process to know if the supplemental budget can be done later. That I think, Doug, you had told me that that's just redoing everything again, and I don't want to put that burden on the staff again, so I'm not sure what happens if you just say, let's just go 5% for now. It's been a tough year on the port for the staff and everybody to get a budget together. So that would be my only, I don't know what happens if you just do a 5% across the board, what would be next?
Well, I guess we could give port staff an opportunity to respond to that. What would be the impacts more formally of simply a 5%?
Well, I guess, back up just a little bit and differentiate between the budget and the rates and fees resolution.
Good point.
Rates and fees resolution is one of multiple items that feed into the budget. So when we're talking about budget here, that's, I think, what people are referring to is the rates and fees item at this time. So going back to that item, I believe we've listened, I know I have, in 10, 11 weeks. I've talked to many scores of people, whether they be recreational fishermen, commercial fishermen, RV people, other stakeholders, people within our port district, people outside of our port district, state legislators, Business Oregon folks, international finance, the finance portion of that. And if I've talked to 82 people, I have 82 opinions about what needs to be done. And nowhere on the job description did I see being a master juggler on there, but that's a little bit what it takes. You've already done a tremendous amount of work, and the staff have, to get to this stage. And the reason that we put all that effort into it was what I thought was the direction I was given when I came in here, was to make these rates more comparable with other ports of our size in our region. And my goal initially when I started in on this was to equalize. Some of these rates were way too low, some of them were okay. There are rates in here, like the annual recreational moorage fee, that are not even increased. They were okay where they were. So I tried to balance that out with the goal that next year, when we came into this process, we wouldn't spend 6 to 12 weeks going through this process. Next year, we could just say, well, inflation was 2.5%. We want to increase the rates by 1.5%. Everybody in agreement? Motion, make it happen. Next item, let's move on. Let's help the port move on and do some good things. So that was my goal, and that's the effort that I put into this, was towards that goal. I feel if we go backwards from where we are, it is just that, moving backwards, and we're not going to rectify this situation. We're only going to take it to the next stage. We're going to have the same issue next year maybe to a little bit smaller extent.
I will offer up my thoughts here as well. I think the way I have looked at all this is, or some of this, is that aside from the fiduciary responsibilities the Commission shares, we also, I think, share a responsibility to avoid sweeping swings in any of the rates that we're charging people whenever possible. I think, as you indicated, there are a number of folks that, and pretty much most people, it seems like, have expressed a willingness and it's not a willingness, nobody wants to have a rate raised, but an understanding of the fact that rates and costs do go up. And, we can't perpetually lose money on the services that we're offering as a result of charging these rates. So rates need to go up. But that being said, I guess, again, I do come back to my comment about the importance of the Port Commission recognizing that increases need to come, but they need to be at a rate that is moderate enough for people to absorb them or to make their own decisions as to whether or not they want to stick around or not, and whatever it is that the rate is associated with. I think at times, some of this, when this process started, we saw some radical corrections from from yourself, Doug, who, again, I think saw a need and said, you want this problem solved? Here's a way to do it. Here we go. But it's clearly a more complex problem than that. We do have some comments here from folks in the audience who wanted to comment on this specific issue. So I'd like to hear from them as well. No particular order here. Robert?
Yes. My name is Robert Waddell. I'm representing Newport Trade Winds. We have 3 boats over here in South Beach Marina. And we've been fishing since 1981. And our sole income is charter fishing for about 48 years now or something like that. And we basically feel that any money we make is when we leave the dock. We have a trip. We're taking out customers that can't afford their own boats. We're servicing the community by having them here so that they also hit all the restaurants and gift shops. I feel that being that it's our sole income and if we are rubbing the boards, we're not making any money. That's something we have in common with the commercial fishermen. We're relying completely on what our boats can make and how much they cost us and whatever's left, just like the commercial fishermen do as well. I feel that any raises should be equally proportionate between what we do and what the commercial fishermen do. I don't think there should be a disproportionate raise for us versus somebody else that works for a living. I just think it should be an even amount. Whatever the raise would be, we shouldn't be singled out and jacked way up.
Thank you. Chris?
Thanks, Stuart. I'm Chris Olson. I own Newport Marina Store and Charge, and also a 20-year leaseholder with the port itself. Been around a few of these cycles. And I'm asking the board to reject the port's proposed change to the charter rates. For mortgage, the proposal is poorly planned. There was no input from the charter community, virtually zero. So I did talk to Karen a little bit, but yet to get through to Doug, the office staff has effectively kept him from me so far. So, after many tries.
After the meeting, I'll give you my card with my direct phone.
I've tried many times, and they say, well, anyway, no return calls either.
Let's keep it focused.
Besides that. The problem with the proposal is we don't mind paying our fair share. Okay, we've been here a long time. We don't mind paying our fair share. But this reopens the door to the out-of-town charge that we compete with down here on a daily basis. They're competing with the established businesses like Trade Winds, myself, that have been in business for years and years and years. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in our business. And what it does is allows these guys to get back or to work down here and compete with my lease for free. I pay, you talked about the leases on the bayfront and how much they contribute to the ports. We have the highest per square foot lease on the port, I believe. I believe I'm correct about that. We pay almost $40,000 a year in lease. And we have people that unload their boats right in front of our store every single day and run illegal charters out here for free. The port had some, the last budget cycle, we tried to get a handle on it by proposing some different fees and all that. Well, now the port's going to try and attach those to the local boats that are working out of offices. So this is just another expense for our office that was never there before. It was not meant to be shared with the offices that run legal charters through an office. It was supposed to be for these out-of-town boats, a day trip permit or whatever you want to call it. So that was the only way they could run a charter business and compete directly with me was by paying some kind of fee. They're a burden on the port's resources. There's certainly unfair competition to the 4 established charter offices in town, 2 of which are your leaseholders. I would like the board to recommend that the established charter boats, the ones that run through an office, and there's only half a dozen boats total is what it amounts to. You'd be given, we used to be tied to the commercial rate, we should be tied back to the commercial rate. We make our living the exact same way. The same thing with Marine Discovery Tours. We should be tied to the commercial rate for mortgage. And then I would like to work with the board. If the board would like to work with any input from me as far as establishing a policy that lets the port have these businesses run down here, but charges them something substantial. There has to be some way you can make money on it. Charge for their parking, and they pay, have to pay for annual recreational mortgage, have a charter license or whatever for these guys. There's no reason that they should be competing directly with any of the legal leaseholders for free. You wouldn't allow Coors to build a processing or bottling plant in Rhodes parking lot without doing something about it. You do it. I deal with it every day. You wouldn't let somebody pull into England Marine and compete with their lease by Harbor Freight or something without paying something. And yet, the port turns a blind eye to the situation at Southeast Marina all the time. So it's definitely unfair competition against our lease. I think our mortgage should be tied to the commercial lease, and I would love to work with the commission on developing a policy that we can all live with. You're never going to stop them all, but the port can make money on it and even the playing field a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
I'm just going to kind of address what Chris is. This is something that's come up in front of the commission before, and it was basically, and we haven't come up with a good solution, but one of the points that Chris brings up is these folks are conducting business on port property. They're inviting people to use our facilities. We're not held, we could be held liable for any of accidents incurred by their customers. They're taking our parking. Their customers are taking our parking. They're taking use of our facilities. I know the Marine Board built the grant, so I'm not sure we could charge them extra for that, but I think it's something that we should be working with Pete. We've talked about doing the same thing up at the terminal with businesses conducting business on port property and coming up with a fee. It would be pretty easy to enforce with some of these boats. They look like NASCAR boats. You're basically, hey, you need to do this. Maybe work with the city, see if they have a city building permit, business permit, and make sure that these folks are licensed to do business in this area. We should probably work with Pete, work with Chris, work with the commission.
You guys have looked into this a little bit as well, I know. I think one of the difficult things about this is enforcement of it. The port isn't a police force per se. Did you guys have any thoughts on the direct, who do we report them to? I mean, we don't issue them a citation per se from us, or is there a bigger picture?
The state police, the way I understand it. Although Stuart came up with a good idea last week in a meeting we had on this very subject, so because we're not ignoring you, we've been meeting on this thing, multiple folks in the staff have. And that was to put up a sign over by your building, giving you something that you can say, hey, you make it right in front of everybody. They can say, you can't do this. This is what you need. And that would be a start. It's not going to solve your issue, but it certainly should help.
Well, and a phone number to report them at.
Exactly.
This could be arguably a somewhat self-policing sort of situation that everybody has a cell phone.
And Aaron has information or first-hand experience doing this down in California, where they actually busted some commercial folks doing this, and he can address how difficult it is to enforce, even for the Coast Guard.
But there's no teeth without a resolution, or
Right,
without
we need to
something
come up
in the
with a
bylaws
policy.
that says you cannot do this, you cannot run a business for free on your property.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
So,
I had some
Yeah.
questions. I'm trying to understand because there's a couple of issues. The legal charters is a bad problem, and it's grown. I've seen it grow over the last 10 or 15 years or so. And like I said, down when I was in Bodega Bay, it was a nightmare for local charter boats to operate down there because there were so many of them that were doing business underneath the table. You know. But what I hear is that we are looking to discourage people who are doing guide boat operations as well. And those boats are legal, but discerning the difference between the two is what's so difficult. So my question is, are we looking to discourage guide boats? Is that what we're looking to do, or are we looking to discourage simply illegal operations?
I don't really think there's a difference between the two if the court has a resolution that says that you can't run a business off of their property.
It's about
That's the bottom
businesses,
line.
yeah.
The court has to protect the leaseholders, for starters. And then you at least have some teeth to put into that saying, like I said, they back their boats in. I've been working with this for 15 or 20 years with Don Mann, and in the past, Walter certainly knows all about it. And it's a huge issue. On any given day, like on All That Talent Day, there are more boats running illegally or not through an office than there are legal charter boats.
But that's the difference there. As you said, not from an office, that you can
How
operate.
can somebody run a business on court property without paying for that privilege?
That's a great question, because we've got that problem across the board. So the question that you're asking is one that is a huge problem at the port that we've talked about for the last few months. And we have folks that are doing welding. You have folks that are doing take or pick. There's all kinds of business going on port property that's not being paid for. And if we want to get into that, that is a major issue that we need to take a wide look at that doesn't just focus on charters. It focuses on all kinds of repairs, any number of different things that affects recreational side, commercial side, terminal, everybody.
Right.
And
They're a burden on the port's resources.
hang on a second. I think in the interest of let's bring this back here a little bit. I think this has touched off a bigger discussion that I think does need to have the commission and port staff time associated with it. There's the specific issue of the illegal charters, but there's a bigger issue here that I think collectively the commission needs to be looking at and with input generate some kind of guidance or a resolution so that we formalize what our policy is here. And we're not going to solve it tonight. What I would suggest, it sounds like, Doug, you're going to interface with Chris a little bit after this meeting. You'll be able to set up a time at some point to discuss his specific issue in greater detail.
Not just me, but Aaron and possibly Karen will be involved in it.
Let's call it port staff.
It won't be tomorrow, though. It will be once we get through the budget process.
I want to make sure that they have access here as the issue seems to be. We've been investing a lot of time into this right now. I think, like I said, think about this idea of a sign, but I think we could hear a little bit more of the problem defined when you guys get together to talk more specifically about the fishing charters. Aaron, I think to your point, I think that's the bigger question also that we need to address as a port. Because I think there's also a fundamental liability. It's just a matter of time before somebody gets injured or a repair fails or something happens and that we'll get swept up in a much bigger issue. So I think it would be almost negligent on some level if we didn't start looking at this and reaching out, I think, more to Pete for guidance on this as well. So 2 separate issues, but I would say in the short term, at some point, see if you can schedule some time when Doug and Aaron have a few minutes to better define exactly what you're talking about. And as far as the rates go, again, I think there's more race to run here a bit. I have some comments that I'm going to reserve for right now. I can send them to you. I should have sent them to you before now, but and I think Walter's comments have been recorded in the minutes about his suggestions, and I think that's where, unless Jeff, you have anything else you'd like to add on the rates?
No, but
or this issue that we've been talking about.
this issue, just when that comes back to the commission, I'd like to know what other ports do.
Mm-hmm. I think that'd be part of it. Again, I think this is going to be sadly centered around a legal issue and the liability as much as anything else. And I think ports are probably, it's the same thing at a shipyard. You go to a shipyard, some of them allow outside vendors to come in, but if they do, they're well vetted, they have all their insurance, they follow certain guidelines, and they move forward. And I think that's what we're dancing around here. So I need to keep it focused right now. You'll have a chance at the end. I'm sorry. Is there any other discussions people want to have on this particular topic at this point? I think in the interest of time here, I think it would be good for us to continue. We're under old business item D, the candidate applications for the vacant port commissioners. Quick update.
Quick update. During the application process, on the last day, we received 2 complete applications, and one of them was Jim Burke, who is here, I believe. I recognize your picture from the website. We haven't met yet, though. I have spoken with Jim on the phone. The other is Yael Fogarty, who's the president of the local ILWU. And so the next step, as I understand it, is the June 4th special commissioners meeting where the 2 candidates will be interviewed, and knock on some wood here, the commission will be able to select the candidate.
Along those lines, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to both candidates, I think as far as it seemed like I've chatted with some of the commissioners and looking at the past, I think just to clarify what the candidates will come in with, I don't believe that the commission is going to be having a formal interview process. I think if we can update the candidates to provide a statement of their interest, and then the commission will be allowed to ask questions associated with their application and their statement, is what we're looking for. We're not going to have a whole slate of questions by which to ask each of these at this point. So I want to make sure that the candidates are clear on what they're walking into.
I can certainly provide them with the typical package that we would provide a new candidate, with the various requirements at the state level that they need to be aware of. I have already sent them my manager reports, my monthly reports, so that they have a broad cross-section of what the port does and have an idea of that.
I just want them to know when they show up, we're not going to sit and interview, have a whole host of questions. We want them to make a statement about their interest. We'll all have a copy of their letters of interest and have an opportunity to ask, each of the commissioners will ask any individual questions they may have focused on their opening statement and anything in their thing. Just so they're aware of what they're going to do.
Is this for the date that's already scheduled?
That's correct.
Okay.
June 4th. Anybody have any other thoughts? Does that work? Yeah. Walter? Nope. And Sarah's good. All right. Any other comments, Doug, on that one?
No, I think it's very clear, but we do unfortunately have a candidate here. Maybe we could ask Jim if he has any questions specifically.
I'd probably prefer not. Let's treat all candidates the same in this particular instance.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, understood.
Let's move on to the contracts for board approval. There's 2 of them there. Either Doug or Aaron.
The first one here is for fire burglary detection system that will work both in the terminal building and in the net shop right next door. I definitely recommend that we do this project. Right now there is no fire detection in either building. There definitely should be, particularly because we've got at least $750,000 in assets of our own housed at the terminal building, plus a bunch of historical documents and things like that. I've got the bids listed here. We've got room in the budget to do it, so I'd make a recommendation that the Commissioner make a motion to authorize the GM to contract with Iconopro to install and monitor a fire burglary system at the Newport International Terminal and the adjacent net shop at the quoted prices.
Comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, I had a question about the budget implications. The fillet table, that was actually a pretty big priority that we've had for the sport marina for the last couple of years. When we took away their dock boxes, that was one of the big issues that they had, is folks in the middle did not have a way to take their fish to get them clean. So that was one of the things that we had promised them that we would do when we put those ordinances in. I know that Chris applied for an R&E grant. Were we awarded that grant?
No, we did not get the grant.
Okay. And as far as the fire and burglary protection, is that something we can get a grant for instead of paying for it completely out of our own pocket?
We could probably go out and try and get a grant for it. It would involve us putting this off for a little while. As far as the existing flake table, I talked to Chris Erbach, the harbor master, extensively about this. To me, it comes down to, what would you rather do right now? Would you rather get a fillet table built right now or get fire protection in a building that houses $500,000 of assets? Chris's feelings on the matter that I took unsolicited was that for now we're getting by with the fillet tables that we've got, and this is a better use of the money that we have at the end of the fiscal year.
Right. I don't disagree. I was just making sure that we didn't get an R&D grant that we were going to be having to give that back.
No, yeah, we definitely don't. We did not get the grant. This was my recommendation as far as expenditures.
That's fine.
And to address your budget issues on these two, this item and the next one, Walter, number one, the fire system is in this year's budget, and we have the funds right now to do the project. The second one, the hoist dock, is in the beginning of next year's budget. And Aaron actually has some very good news for you on that one, which we need some good news, so we've got some there.
Okay. Any other comments on this one?
No.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we authorize the GM to contract with Icona Pro to install and monitor a fire burglary alarm system at the Newport International Terminal and the adjacent net shop at the quoted prices.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you for the summary on that. And Karen, did you note when Sarah dropped off?
Yes.
Okay, just because you'll start seeing 3-0 votes on things. Okay. Thank you. Well, let's quickly move into staff reports here.
Did you want to touch the hoist dock?
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Aaron, the good news, sorry.
So after this started by getting a lot of complaints, mainly from the Commercial Fishing User Group of electrical issues down at the hoist dock, because we're basically overloading the system that's on the dock. The independent buyers that run aeration and water pumps down there regularly are overloading the breakers that we have in the existing circuits. So wanted to add several new circuits, a total of 16 outlets down there for them. What I've got here on the quote, I took a look at the job, the way that they set it up, and I asked them to take another look at it. Instead of running wires all the way underneath the terminal and going from getting our source of power from the east end, not the terminal, the hoist dock, but getting power from the east end. Instead of doing that, getting it from both sides. And then we don't have to work underneath the pier, we don't have to use boat, we don't have to do any of that stuff. It's a lot easier, and it cut it in half. Well, 12,009 is what they came in at. So the motion would stay the same. It would just, we would not spend this amount of money. It would be 12,009 is what the quote was that I got. Now, I got one quote. I got no quotes from 3 others. So it's hard to get contractors, especially electrical and plumbing right now, because they're a lot of people working at the hospital. So I had no bids from basically everybody I contacted except for one. So that's one factor that's in the decision to be made there. Having said that, it's a similar situation where I don't, trying to get somebody else to come out and do the job right now it's not going to happen right. It's not going to happen soon. Is our only other alternative. So.
Did they give you a rough time frame?
The rest of the folks,
No, on these guys, when you said they had...
They could start this in July.
Oh, they can start this right away. The other folks were down the road. Okay.
So 12,009.
Yeah.
As opposed to 38?
Right. Because they don't have to run, like I said, they're not running conduit and wiring all the way underneath the dock. I have them go from the commercial building and come out of there, and then go from the shack that we've got down over by the customs trailer and get power from there. And then we're not going to add a bunch of outlets or anything along the pier face itself right now. We'll just keep it at the ends and add circuits so it's not overloaded.
Okay. Okay.
There were some numbers thrown around there. I just want to throw out. We had it in at 38,194. It's now going to be 12,981.
Or we could wait until I get more bids, and that's going to be, it'll be in the fall probably is what it looks like.
Are you comfortable with the amount? Does it
It's
make
been-
sense to you?
It's a bit high. I would rather see it drop down, but what I'm trying to balance here is we're overloading circuits right now. So, breakers aren't switches and they're not supposed to be thrown constantly like that. I don't want to, what I wouldn't want to have happen is that we wind up with a fire or somebody gets hurt and we didn't do anything. That's to me, that's kind of the choice right now.
Seems like time is of the essence, yeah?
My only concern is that we're approving a project that hasn't been approved through next year's budget.
Right.
So, and I don't know what the implications are to that. And whether or not we should wait until we approve the budget and then go out for more bids, that's all.
Pete, do you have any feedback on that experience?
Where you at the budget process?
We're waiting now for the second budget committee meeting, at which point hopefully the budget will be approved. So it's not approved today.
Yeah, your auditor, Franklin, could probably make the motion subject to auditor finding the legal way to do it, if you're inclined to do it, and if not, that would be a good reason, but I believe they have a suspense account of some sort. You can't just stop business because the budget's not approved. I'm not an auditor, so I don't know what account they actually put that in. Mark, would you know? Has to do a suspense account, or? Yeah, I think that would be tough.
No work is intended to be started on this until after July 1st.
Right. It would be.
I mean, the chance of it.
Chance of a budget not passing is nil.
James had a question.
Who's your auditor?
David Kinks had a question.
Oh, so you did.
But it's up to you. It's up to you.
I saw Dave had a question back there too.
It's not a question, it's just really quick, but you've changed the parameters of your bid, okay? In the public bidding process, Pete, is that allowable to change the parameters without going out and resubmitting your bids?
That's the next question is, and I appreciate that. Let's keep this up here. The RFP process, I suppose, is the question, or would we get more bids since we've changed the scope of things?
Oh, that's a good question. So I didn't change the scope of anything. I made some suggestions to them about some ways that they might consider doing it. And considering that I put it out, and this is the hard part, because usually what would have been done would you'd have a meeting, all the contractors would come on out, you'd be like, this is what we're looking at getting done, and all that would sort of be fleshed out in front of everybody. But since I only have one contractor, I didn't. I can't really do that. I've got no bids from several others in town, and that counts as a bid. If they refuse to bid for whatever reason, it counts.
Absolutely, it does. I guess the question is have we significantly changed the scope of the project that merits a new RFP? And Pete, any thoughts?
Yeah, your purchasing resolution, I think that's a 2007 one, was it 7 dash, whatever it is. That one requires 3 bids if it's under, I believe, 50,000, which these are. But then I heard something later in the discussion that it may be an emergency. So, not to alert anybody when I hear the word fire, that makes me think of how close is that to actually being an issue? Circuit breakers do burn up at some point, but is it something that you seriously believe could be an emergency? So you got two things going on.
Yeah.
You can actually exempt your own rules if there's an emergency. But yeah, the preference would be to go out and check again with the reworked design. Because it's something you came out with a bidder, reworked the design.
But the scope hasn't changed.
So what I could do is if we got to kill time before they can start anyway, I can put it back out again. But the project will remain the same.
Again, I think Pete brings up a good point here, and I'm not sure if your answer totally yet. I mean, if we can consider this an emergency situation, and if we have a documented, well-documented concern that's been voiced, and something terrible happens, the liability that we have is obvious, as opposed to the fact that we just simply said, well, we're not going to address this because it didn't fit in with our budget cycle or our purchasing mechanism. So we punted this emergency situation. I mean, I've heard from the public that people are getting shocked down there. Clearly, but are we at that level? I mean, if a breaker failed and somebody was in a situation, or can I put you on the spot that
Well,
much?
that's a difficult question to answer, because if I felt like that was going to happen tomorrow, I would definitely say let's shut it all down.
Yeah.
But I'm not at that point to where, it's definitely a concern. It's something we need to get done quickly. I don't know that I'm at the point where I believe, if I felt like somebody was, the breakers are going to wear out at some point, and then that's where, it creates more space between the connections, it creates heat, which eventually turns into arc and spark, and you get your fire. I don't know how far we are from that. All I can tell you is we got some well-worn breakers that have been tripped and tripped and tripped and tripped and tripped.
So the concept of emergency doesn't require that you're certain, but that you can reasonably believe that there's an emergency. I mean, I know what circuit breakers do. I think they break contacts. But I would guess that when I hear fire, that there's something in the mechanism that is failing. And so, is it something that's worth inspecting? Maybe for $80 you can inspect them and delay the concept of emergency for a little longer. But I think once I hear that, I think we need to do something. Would the electrician come on and inspect them? I mean, is that possible?
Well, I could certainly do that. It's not. They wouldn't start work until July anyhow, so I can do all of the above basically.
So
I can rebid. I can put the job back out for bid at the same time that we are having somebody take a look at it. At the same time, we are waiting for us to be able to expend our funds.
I think that shows a due diligence in the situation right now that would cover us. And I think would protect us on a lot of different levels, both from a legal as well as a financial process perspective. And regardless of the changing of the scope, I mean, the big change here is that nobody has to get under the pier in your modified version, right?
Yeah, but I never required them to get under the pier in the first place, so that was,
So I think because it is such a shift here, I think that's what I'd feel most comfortable at, is just that we can get an assessment done, as you said, in the short term of the on-site situation. How bad is bad from a trained professional, if you will. I think a revised version of this with your newly defined scope of sorts, something that created this project to get cut in half, and put it out for an RFP, albeit a short one. Make sure that Western States knows about it if they were the last ones to bid. And it sounds like that's probably the best of all worlds. Walter, any other? No. Does that seem reasonable?
That's a good way forward.
Aaron, do you have good direction?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I would say let's move on to the staff reports. One of the things, I will jump right out, just before you jump into this, Mark, one of the things that seems to be missing from some of our packets here is a formal, and Karen, this is at you too, is a formal approval of the financials. I don't believe we've been making motions and approving those financials for the last couple of months. Am I missing something?
The next quarterly financials will be at the end of this quarter.
But we do that on a monthly basis, and I don't believe we've been doing that. And I don't see them in this packet.
No, and I should have asked Walter, now that he's Secretary Treasurer, to come in and go through some of that process with us also.
Yeah, but I mean, historically, we've always had these in the meeting packets. I mean, I think maybe a couple of things need to happen here fairly quickly. We need to put them back in here and make sure that they're part of the standing agenda item for our meetings, regularly, monthly financials. And then the question is we need to review the ones we have missed and have formal resolutions and approvals of those going forward, unless my commissioners feel differently.
I'll get with Karen tomorrow and just go look them over and then maybe have them sent out to the commission.
I think that'd probably be good, and we'd look at possibly approving those more formally at the next budget meeting, which we know we'll have in the next couple of weeks or week.
Mark, do you need time to prepare those? Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe, Walter, if you don't mind catching up with the port staff on this, but it is something that's glaringly missing from our packets as well as a process.
Good catch.
Okay. Mark, with that, your report.
Report from the finance department. There's some highlights included in the packet. Aside from spending considerable time doing the budget documents directed by Doug, we are also implementing a payroll schedule change. Employees will now be paid twice a month. One of the features is this will bring us into compliance with IRS withholding rules. Our third-party payroll provider mentioned that if we're paying people once a month, employees once a month, but offering a mid-month draw, you really need to have withholding taken from that mid-month draw. This change. Some debt service payments that are coming up. We've had the last 3 large bond payments. One was made a week ago for the full faith and credit obligation bond, and you see the amount listed there. In June, we're going to have a go bond payment for the Series 2011, for the final payment for the year, and then Series 2016 go bond payment. Also the final payment for the year for all of our bonds. Also, probably received my email regarding identification information, personal identification information for the unlocked bank signature cards. Those we want to update sooner than later.
You want them by again? When would you like them to you by?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
The latest end of the first week of June.
Okay.
And also maybe interject there that we have one form here for each of you to sign tonight. Is that right, your brother?
That's the signature card, right?
Yeah. So before you leave, if you'll sign it.
That'll make it easier. The comments about the lease that you Newport Bell Bed and Breakfast.
Yeah, so the owners of the Newport Bell Bed and Breakfast, they have that business on the market to sell. So they've actually been asking for a year to have a modification of the lease agreement to allow for a cancellation of the lease if the business vessel is sold. They would be locked into that lease. So we drafted a modification of the lease. Pete has looked over it, but we just got that back, so we're going to do a review in-house before it goes to the owners for their comment.
And it's not an immediate release, it's 60 calendar days.
It is, yes, 60 calendar days.
Mark, thank you for all your hard work on the budget. You weren't at the meeting, so I appreciate it. All the time you and Becca spent and put into that. Okay.
The work was more than you could have imagined that they put in. Yes.
Next, Aaron, I think you're up.
All right, so yeah, the RV park's picking up, the boat brand, the recreational side is picking up. The hoist stock's starting to drop off a little bit in activity. Terminal hay season started on the 15th with a really short strike, but Don is not quite as busy as he was over the last couple of months there. I went to that Food from the Sea workshop that was sponsored by Oregon State. That was an effort to try and come up with some ideas on how the new facility was going to look and what they want to use their resources best for it. Plus, I got to learn a lot about the seafood supply chain. I talked to Clint Funderburk this month about albacore quite a bit. And I talked to a few other different folks, Western Fish Boat Owners Association and the albacore fishing, it's AFA is what it's two main associations that cover issues for albacore fishermen. And AFA actually sets up a lot of their logistics as well. So I learned as much as I could about what it is that they would need if they came into Newport and why they haven't come in here recently. We're kind of dealing with a similar situation what Frank was getting at earlier with tourists. It seems like in the past they've come around and not really been able to get offloaded as quickly as what they wanted. So we've actually been a member of the Western Fish Boat Owners Association as a supporting member in years past. I found out we haven't paid our dues in a couple of years. But that's definitely something that we, if we utilize that, we can get information on Newport out to albacore fishermen. And it's especially important because it's a highly migratory species, so they move around a lot. And what I heard was, talking to a couple different people, simple logistical issues is what we need to be, like I got a lot of questions on, can I get a rental car delivered down to the docks and things like that? And I said, yeah, well, there's an enterprise in town that'll do it. People don't know this. Laundry, shower facilities was something that people brought up. There's a number of things that are simple that we can do to encourage, more albacore boats to come into town. I got contacted by some folks that were potentially talking about offloading some squid across our dock. That hasn't materialized as of yet, but I did a similar exercise with squid, trying to figure out what it is that we would need. I got referred to Dean Fleck over in England. He referred me over to Stan Schoen, and I called him and talked with him quite a bit about what it takes, scale wise. Of course, it's a bit the operation has a larger footprint than most of what we do at the hoist dock. So they have to have a place to park the machine, and then also they lay out about 30 totes or so at a time. But it's mainly truck traffic and things like that. So that hasn't materialized so far. I'm going to be going to there's a meeting for that's not a quota fishery, but it has what's called a harvest guideline, which is kind of like a slot quota. And there's a meeting on the 31st of May here in town to discuss where they're going to go with the rest of the fishery. I think they've offloaded. I had heard they offloaded 500,000 pounds one week down to Charleston this year. So there's definitely squid up in the area. There's been a couple boats offloaded here in town as well. So that might come to us at some point in time this summer as well. So there's two possibilities, for increased activity on the commercial side this summer in offloading either albacore or possibly squid. We completed the work that was required for us to do what we need to do for this 6 months of to keep our construction permit open around McLean Point. That was done. I got word from the city that they approved of that. Secured moored facilities ready for the OSP Enforcement Vessel Guardian. We should have a lease soon. By the time the next meeting comes around, we should have a lease ready for commission approval.
What's the term on that lease?
It is 5 years. Met with the fire chief about possible installation of a propane tank over here in South Beach for propane retail sales. Mobile crane and terminal went down for a couple of days. We got that fixed. It's just something to keep in mind. As the crane gets older, it's going to have more mechanical failures. We put the crane in the Loyal City Parade along with our new Ranger. I got this bit here about this employee assistance program. I won't read through the whole thing, but we have a limited employee assistance program that's available through Standard, which is our insurance. It's quite limited. This other program, I think, is a good buy for what they're charging for an organization of our size and the number of. You can see in the back of the packet all of the services that they'll provide for us. There's a lot of really good things that are available for employees to use. That kind of bridges the gap between things that insurance doesn't cover and things that they would have to dip into their pocket over that would directly affect them at work. So I think it's a good program. You'll see the rest of the locations reports there.
Aaron, do you need anything else from us on that?
No, I
Okay,
don't.
it's moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually within a week or so being implemented and getting the staff together and giving them all the details.
Great.
And that's my Director of Operations report.
Thank you.
I just had one question for Aaron.
Yeah. Any?
So, Aaron, on the installation of the propane station, are they going to have to cut the asphalt also?
They're coming out tomorrow to
Okay.
let me know what they want, how they want to go about doing that. But yeah.
I did have a question about the Swede stock stuff, though. Did you?
Yeah, that's on my next. That's my next.
Okay.
Wait. You're talking about the Swedes dock issue, right?
Yeah. I guess that's your next.
The next one is hoist dock revenue increase. The one after that is commercial capacity, and then Swedes is the one after that.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm jumping ahead.
Okay. I've got a staff report on increased revenue at the hoist dock. So we took a look at 01 May to 01 May, 17 to 18, and then back to 16 to 17. This year we increased revenue across the dock by 19%. It can be attributed, obviously it's fisheries related, so it depends on how the fisheries are doing. First and foremost, if they're not having a good year with crab, we're probably not going to have a good year at the hoist dock. It affects all that stuff directly. But we added that second shift, and through the second shift we were able to increase the amount of revenue from our independent buyers by over double. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, but I think it was related to that second shift that we added over there. The independent buyers were able to go out and expand their business a little bit, and we definitely brought more revenue in because of it. Now, as far as the cost of it, as many things at the port go, if you externalize the cost of the infrastructure, the asphalt, the pilings, and the pier itself, we have probably about a 12 to 15% profit margin on it. But if you bring all that into it, of course, it blows it all out. So the cost of the machinery and the personnel, we covered there, though. And that's what I've got on the hoist dock.
So I just had one question, Aaron. So basically, I know it's a vital service we provide, but I know the crab bite was pretty good late, and they had a really great price. I mean, we can't bank on that every year, can we?
Right.
Okay, I mean, so it was a good shot in the arm for this year, but that's not something we should hang our hat on every year.
Hanging our hat on it,
right.
Being like that's the thing that we do.
Right.
It's not going to be the new great,
No, I understand that, but I'm like, it's one of those things we need to consider.
I think that for me, it's coordinating because it's also very much, it's not like you're offloading fishing boats, and the fishing boats
right.
come in when the weather's up, or when they're full, or all these variables that you can't schedule real.
Right.
So if you can coordinate with the buyers really well and help them any way you can to get what's up the supply chain from them, that's the trucking, transportation, everything
right.
through there. That's what we should focus on, is doing that, and then so that we can surge it if we need to because it's a good year, or back it off because it's not a good year. It's not a good idea to commit a bunch of resources to it
right.
all in and then
That was my point.
Right,
so,
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Comments?
The issue with this is the issue with everything else in the port, and that is how do we long-term maintain our infrastructure, and what are our cost structure, and how do you account for that? And so it's something we need to look at, but it applies to everywhere else too. So but at some point we probably need to delve into it. Like it looks like you say you're doing. I'd be curious to see what.
I got some ideas on it,
Yeah.
but we're getting long in it too, so I don't know. Maybe,
Yeah. So, but thank you for that.
So the next staff report I got there is on moorage capacity. So these, okay, if you look at these numbers that are here, this is not a perfect representation of where we're at, because it doesn't leave any room on the ends of the boats for space in between boats, and it doesn't leave any room on corners for, obviously boats are not mitered, so they don't fit perfectly into the corner. So it's just a reference point for you to be able to see kind of where we're at. Aside from that, so you got the 7,893 linear feet of dock space that's available versus what we've granted in annual and semi-annual moorage at 7,576 feet. So you could say we're at 96% capacity. That's not a true number. This is just a reference point. Now, if you look at the Association of Marine Industries, there's not a lot of places where you can go, and people have done a lot of homework on this stuff, but that was one of the ones that gave us a reference point. That they say 85% is functionally full. It also happens to be what the parking guy that the city hired to do the parking study on the Bayfront says. You're functionally full at 85%. In any case, so we have, and I'm not recommending any changes to what we're doing in practice. We overbooked the marina, and so what I'm recommending here is that we should probably look at this number here, this 96% number, and in the long term decide what point we are going to do different things. And at what point would we then say, okay, we're probably not going to grant any more annual morages this year, or we're going to grant a different package of morages, or it may affect rates somehow or another, or any number of different things. But this is not unique to us. There's other harbors that do it. I haven't had a chance yet to talk with Kodiak a great deal, but I understand that they're one that has a very structured way of changing how they charge based on whether or not your slip's available and things like that. But the reason why I wanted to put this report in there is we get a lot of questions on how come I can't have my own slip, or new annual moorage holders want to bring in a very large boat that sometimes we may not be able to accommodate. It's important to understand that there is a point where we will get to where we can't fit any more people. We are definitely getting close there, although you can drive by on any given day and see that there's some blank spaces. The reason for that is obviously people are out fishing or they're out getting some maintenance done or whatever it is. So recommendations that I've got are that in order to better align people's expectations or manage expectations, we should in the MLA spell out a little bit more clearly that not guaranteed to have a spot, or we define what it is. There's places in our marina that don't have hookups, that don't have water. You go out on 7, they can't get water out at the end of 7. We should definitely clarify these kind of issues in the MLA so that people understand what they're getting into when they sign anything. I think we should set a benchmark for when we consider our marina to be functionally full. And like I said, that's a debate that can be had. You could use linear footage as a reference point if you like, or if somebody's got a better idea, I'll be all ears. We should clarify, it's mentioned kind of vaguely, but we should clarify that side tie space and slip usage is preferred. But if we get full enough, like if we were able to bring in a transient fishery like Alcor, for example, we get a lot of boats that come in from out of state fishing tuna. We might want to let people know they might be side tying in the MLA. It does say at the harbor master's decision, but I think we should clarify it. And then finally, like I said, the point about seaworthy and fully operational vessels is what the Port Facility Code says we're supposed to have in there. And those are subjective terms. I mean, what's fully operational to one person, another person would step a foot on to go out, And if you ask anybody, they will oftentimes say, all I got to do is put a new main in it, or all I have to do is, there's a reason why I'm I haven't been fishing for the last 10 years or whatever. But, you know, I think that what we should do is take a look at our port facilities code and make it more on past behavior. You know, I mean, fish tickets are something that you know, it's a hard and fast document. If you base it on how much, and it could be any number of different, you know, whatever that number needs to be, we can talk about and get it right. But, you know, I fished X amount in the last 2 years is a clear indication that I'm operational. If I haven't fished anything for the last decade, I'm probably not operational and I shouldn't be more than a commercial marina. But those are some things I think we can do to the port facilities code that might help us discourage any kind of liveaboards over there. And it's way easier for us to enforce. That's, you know, it's great to have a rule, but if it's not enforceable or it's difficult to enforce, it becomes not a rule real quick. And that's what those are my recommendations on moorage.
Any comments?
Nope. Have any boats been turned away for annual moorage?
Yeah, we have turned away a few of them. Mainly, I had a guy call that wanted to bring a 160-foot boat, and I said we can't tie up in there.
For annual moorage or just for a period of time?
Yeah, he wanted to do an annual moorage. I questioned whether or not he was really serious, but we've had a number of them.
Any idea how many?
I think probably something, since I've been at the port, somewhere around 10 or so, something like that. And, you know, and it's because we also get complaints when people want a spot when they come in, you know, so we're in a difficult position. That's what happens when you overbook. But, you know, there's a way for you to figure out based on chances of when it's going to be that full. There's a way to figure out what the right number is if you're going to overbook. Plus, it's better for us to have some contingencies for these folks. You know, if they come in and we don't have a spot there for them, we can put them someplace temporarily. But a little bit more forethought going into the choice to overbook instead of it's what we've always done or this is what we have to do. You know.
Okay.
I think the seaworthiness or fully operational ideas really do need to get vetted or fleshed out a little bit. You know, I think this is where the user group might be able to help you a little bit as well in helping to establish that. But, you know, spaces become a premium and times change. So if people aren't actively engaged in this and fit the criteria for the commercial marina, then you have to find another home if it comes down to that. So, do you need anything from us at this point, or are you just going to continue to flush this out and report back?
Keep thinking about it and putting ideas out there, and at some point, I will make some recommendations. I have a bunch of recommendations for port facility code I need to put together anyway, and those would be some of them. And like I said, and there's under no circumstances am I saying that these are perfect ideas or these are all figured out. There are things that maybe there are directions that we might be able to go in that would make things a little bit better. But we definitely also want to recognize that there are such things as distressed fisheries and startup operations as well. So.
No question about it. But yeah, like I said, I think this would be again another good use of that group for their thoughts on if there is a direction on what would be considered seaworthy from their perspective. Certainly as it relates to fisheries and those kinds of things, like you said, distressed fisheries, maintenance. You know, tough times. We want to balance all that out, but there's a limit. So.
My only thought would be, as with a lot of other things, you know, what other reports do, what other documents and policies are out there. And may not exactly fit us, but that's always good to see what they're doing. I agree with passing it through the commercial fishery user group.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. The next one is on the shoaling over at Sweets Dock. Some of these pictures aren't the greatest, but in any case, there's two storm drains that empty near Sweets Dock. You can see there. One of them comes out underneath what I would call the old fern plant viewing platform. It's a viewing platform right there on Bay Boulevard, just before our yard. So one's right underneath there. The other one's kind of tucked in the corner that just got put in. You can see the details on it, so I won't read through those. Second, on the back side of that, I've got some photos in there. The figure 2 is so the problem that came from outfall number 1, I'll call it, was a singular event. There might have been another issue with it just a few months ago, but where the whole road kind of got pushed up inexplicably by a bunch of water that just rushed out there, and I don't think they ever figured out where that came from either. But in any case, this was February 2016. You can see that there's a lot of sediment just pouring out underneath that platform, and that emptied into the mud flat right there by Swedes Dock. Figure 3, that's just an average day, wintertime day with rainfall. It's hard to tell the color of water, but that's a milky brown right there, and that's going right past the boathouse that's right there at Swedes Dock. And figure 4, you can see that roughly the same location at a recent -2 foot tide. So it looks to me like it's changed over the last year. You can see a side-by-side at the bottom there, that the one on the left was last year to -2, and the one on the right is this year to -2. We've had a couple of boats that were, like I said, I've got it in there. Western Breeze bump the bottom over next to the hoist number 4. And like I said, I think that this is going to continue to do this, is what I believe. There's a couple of recommendations that I could best make, and that's that we're going to need to dredge the area, and then we're going to need to think long term what the impacts of that are going to be and what's the best long term fix for it. Because just dredging it is not going to stop it. I think it's going to continue, and we'll need to figure out an engineering fix to it, or a long-term dredging plan that's going to make sure that we keep that area clear. Because the Swedes Dock's really important for in-water work for all the fishing boats, and then it doesn't go far, and it goes right around the corner to the hoist dock. It's going to start showing in there if it continues.
Do you have a recommendation on who should pay for the dredging?
There's the city's outfall. Maybe there'd be some cost sharing or something there. I don't know, but I also would say that we need to keep a close eye, because in the future, as people put more storm drains in, if they come into our marina, it's going to do this. So,
what kind of a dredge? I mean, that's a pretty tight area in there. Do we have a small? I assume there's a small dredging companies that can squeeze in there.
Well, you can do some of it by excavator with a long arm, but there's also the dredge company that just did South Beach last year. That dredge has been used for Depot Bay Harbor before.
So they could squeeze in over here.
Yeah, and then the state has a similar sized dredge that they run out of Coos Bay. So those might be some options, but this is pretty shallow over here. You'd have to talk to them to be sure what the capabilities are.
So, again, going forward, what's the plan here?
We're going to need to dredge it.
Yeah.
And we're going to need to think long term. We should have.
So, in the short term, I guess, is there a short-term meeting, I suppose, on the matter of months? Is it an opportunity for you to go reach out to some of these dredging companies to get an idea of what it might cost?
I can talk to them and see what it's going to take. I had recommended 1920, the in-water work period over 1920 as being, we need to dredge by then. If we could do it this in-water work period, that'd be great. One of the reasons why I picked that one is I'm hoping by that point in time we could maybe fund some piling replacement on Swedes Dock, because it's got those 8-inch pilings in there, and half of them are either broken or getting ready to break, and we really don't want to lose that stretch of dock. It's for those guys to be able to do work.
So you're going to look into actual dredging costs associated with this, and get back to us.
Find out what the actual cost would be and what their capabilities are.
Reasonable. Okay. Next.
I've also started looking into what it would take we have to permits. There should be some, there's public comment periods for all the permitting, and then also what it would take for us to require others to come to us to have an outfall that comes into our marina that has a direct effect on us.
Isn't there an EIR done by the city before they put this thing in?
I had no idea. I was before,
EAP.
That
Did you
was,
want- We've already covered that.
Yep.
enough?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the updates. Anybody have any questions for Aaron? Doug, you're up.
Okay, first I'd like to put forth the fact that it's worked out great, I think, now that I've been able to focus on GM type stuff, now that I have a little better idea what a GM here does and his constraints and what's expected of him. And Aaron has bloomed in the Director of Operations role, and I think you see that with all the items reports that he produced this time, and I think you're going to continue to see that. So the team, I believe, is working well together. I just want to throw that out. My monthly general manager's report, I'm not going to read it to you. Item 20, I basically included the gray highlighted portion as the budget message conclusion. So for those of you who didn't read the budget message, which was 13 pages or whatever, or couldn't find the budget message or haven't had time to yet, the conclusion is here, and I think you'll find some helpful information in there, I hope. Item 24, I would like to address. Once we get through this budget committee process and get our budget not necessarily approved through the next step, then I'll have more time to focus on some longer term items that have been on my plate, but I haven't been able to address time-wise. And I've listed 5 of them here. No sense going over them, but they're all equally important to the port, and we're going to be working through them. So I just want to put them out there in front of everybody. And then the last 3 items are just some reflections, some time I had to reflect on this whole thing, and I try to do that for myself when I get done with the monthly report and say, well, what have we done? Where are we going to go? And what are some things I learned? And so I put 3 points down there. For the first time this weekend, I had some serious time off. And one of the days I read a book called The Boy from Dalsetts, which was a book on the city's first city manager, Don Davis. I learned some valuable stuff in there and recommend it to folks. One of the things that I thought was a little humorous and useful for me, he said when he came into the position as the first city manager, they gave him a box of 50 bullets, and 25 of the bullets were for killing rabbits, and 25 of the bullets were for killing elephants. And he said the hardest part of his job was trying to figure out which bullets to use for which issue. And if you use the small bullets to shoot the elephant's going to get pissed off and come over and stomp on you. And if you use the elephant bullet to kill a rabbit and blow him all over the place, the public's going to get upset about the poor bunny. So he pointed out you can't win, you got to do your best and go from there. I thought that was still worthwhile many decades later. That's it for me.
Commissioners? Walter? Or Jeff?
I know you've got some of these on 24. How are things going with Evan Hall? Because I know that
I spoke to Evan Friday.
Okay, I know we have some of his leases that we're supposed to turn over. What's the process? What's the progress on those?
Actually, it's one large lease, but there are 2 sections of the lease, sections 1 and 3, that they've been doing geotechnical testing on, and they want to start filling and eventually doing their build-up of commercial buildings there. And so we're going to be in the process of, as I mentioned here, in releasing those 2 sections for them.
All right, I went back and looked at some of the minutes, and I know that he wanted to start on May 1st was his construction time, and we're into June. I just want to make sure that we're proceeding quickly on that. I know the Teven brothers were here. I know, is there any update on that?
The update on that is, it's my intention this week to send the Teven brothers an update of where I feel we're at now. I've talked about it at some length with different folks, with commissioners and different folks involved, and extensively with Pete. And so, interestingly enough, not that I always agree with attorneys, but Pete and I are in total agreement on it, so I will send a letter to them hopefully by Friday and let them know where we stand, and we'll go from there.
Okay. And I would suggest two other things. NOAA lease, I know we had some issues with their boat policy, and one of those boats was scheduled to be here in July. I don't know if that's been
There are multiple
addressed.
boats coming up from Scripps and from Hawaii.
Right.
I spoke at some length with Stuart about that, and as a consequence, we have a meeting next Friday with two of the top NOAA people here, and Stuart's going to join us. We have a lunch meeting, and we're going to discuss that issue. And before that, I have identified, Stuart and I have worked on a number of items that I need to identify and bring to that meeting so that we can be more productive.
Okay. Stuart, that was an ad hoc committee. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to be part of that, or unless Jeff would like to be part of that. Patricia was the other member on it.
In terms of the NOAA?
Yeah.
Jeff, do you have any issues with that? Welcome to the party.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's good. And this is not a trivial issue with the NOAA vessels. These are larger visiting vessels. This really comes down to, not that we're trying to exclude anybody, it really comes down to, as I discussed with Doug, about an interpretation of the lease. Who's assuming any of the risk associated with these vessels visiting? And I want to make sure that the port doesn't get into any entanglements. If there is an issue, it shouldn't be our problem per se if NOAA agrees to allow somebody else to tie up. So that's what we need to get to the bottom of. I think that's at the core of our issues.
I think it's great that we're being proactive on that rather than wait until a ship rams the pier.
Or somebody falls into the ocean off the pier.
Okay, and the last, I know we had been told that our new CFO was going to be here. Do you have an update on that person?
I'd be happy to, sure. Tom Ludis, our CFO, he was delayed. He has a direct family member that went into the hospital and was expected to die. The individual pulled through and is at home now, but in still an extremely serious situation. And so he's asked for a little more time. And that, Stuart, do you want me to go into some detail on that, on what the consequences of that are and how that led to some other things that we're thinking about and discussing? Or
I think now is as good time as any.
Sure, okay. Basically, I talked to Tom and asked him if he would be willing to work on a part-time basis helping us out while he solved these issues, and he was more than happy with that. And I talked to our finance group, and they think it would be a good idea as well. And to my not great surprise, but we pulled through this budget process with flying colors, I believe, and we ate a tremendous amount of pizza and put out a great document, I believe, and a budget that we can stick to this year, and it's good for the port. We did that without a director of finance, and that got me thinking: do we really need a director of finance? So things change. You have to reevaluate things in business all the time. I was, to my surprise, Mark mentioned to me recently, long after we'd done through the budget process, that our other finance consultant, Todd Kimball, had suggested to Mark that we probably don't need a director of finance. And so, in order to kill two birds with one stone, one of the biggest things that I struggle with is how to take care of our employees. They're totally underpaid, overworked, and some of them are right on the edge of where you can push them. And these guys they're making a Taco Bell number on their salaries, and some of them are driving in from Siletz, and if they have a bigger vehicle, it's costing them $10 one way or $10 over and back for gas, and they're just getting by. And they're the heart and core of everything that we do. And if we don't have those people, the port's in serious trouble. And you've got any number of them that have stuck with the port for decades for different reasons, but they're certainly not here for the reason of salary. They're here because the girlfriend's here, or their wife's family is here, or they like the coast, different reasons, but it's certainly not the salary. And every day, and I keep considering, man, we've got to take care of these people better because they're the heart and soul. And if we start losing them, and we do have some of them, some of the supervisors that are going to be the harbor masters and are going to be retiring in the near future, and that has to be turned over to a new generation. We need some new people in. We've got a very, very aging workforce. We've got people working for the port that are in their late 70s. This is not sustainable. So what I came up with is a solution that has not been presented to the commissioners yet, other than to Stuart, has not been presented to the rest of the budget committee, but it will be in the near future. And I came up with the idea that, okay, let's work Tom at a half salary, and let's take his money and put it into the salaries of those, I want to say lower level folks, but in our organization we have 3 upper level folks, 3 directors, myself, Aaron, and the director of finance, who may or may not be full-time. We have 8 supervisors, the harbor masters and NOAA and the terminal. And below those 8 supervisors, we have 16 people that are out there running forklifts and doing this and that, out in the weather all the time, doing the bulk of the work. So I want to take half of Tom's salary, and I want to spread it among those 16 people that have the biggest need for it. And we've talked this over among the staff and decided that we're not looking for any more money. The supervisors aren't looking for any more money. We want to help those people who really need it, and that'll help the port directly. So it doesn't impact the budget a penny. It'll be the same number that's in there. It'll just be distributed a little bit differently. And so that's the thought and the process of where I'm coming from there, and I think it's within my purview to do that. And it's important enough, though, that I want the buy-in of the budget committee and the commissioners, because it is a bit of a paradigm shift from where we've been before. So we just want to throw that out there. I know it's a lot to take in.
But, and again, this fairly new idea at this point, but you're going to be vetting this or discussing this at the next budget and finance meeting that we have?
Absolutely. I hope to write up something on it for the members as well, but I also will be speaking to each of those members hopefully before then, so that we can sit down and brainstorm it and flesh it out a little bit.
Any other comments on Doug's reports?
Nope.
I'd just say on the CFO, I know Mark and Becca have spent a lot of time on this. I know that Todd Kimball's been available. Has he been available enough to answer your questions, Mark?
He's been available for I guess most recently we asked him for guidance on the budget.
Okay.
Some budget details.
Okay, and I just also offer up special districts. I know that they have a program and they have people on staff to answer your questions, and I don't know if you knew about that, but I know that special districts, and if you have those questions, I know we pay for them for consulting anyway.
And Pete's been kind enough, we even had some legal issues where Pete's actually told me, I think that was best answered by SDAO because they know it better than I, and you have 8 to 10 hours of free time coming this year, you should use it. So.
Well, they might be cheaper than Todd Kimball too. I mean, and as far as a part-time CFO, I'm used to having a CFO here, so I mean, I'll look forward to hearing that out. But I just, first gut instinct is I would like to have someone here that's vested in the community and not working on a part-time basis. It's here on staff that I could go see, and that's just my comment right now.
All right. Anything else, Doug, for the group?
No, sir.
Okay. We've all stuck it through here. We have just a little bit. Any commissioner reports? Walter?
Yeah. I recently attended a conference that was put on by the Nature Conservancy. It was on behalf of the Pacific Fisheries Management Council. The council, the PFMC, is considering a climate initiative, and that is to how to address fisheries issues with upcoming climate change. They intend to do a little bit more outreach to the fishing communities. They're going to consider if there's species moving north, processing capacity, infrastructure. It's going to be an ongoing process, and it's going to be new for the council because it's going to be proactive instead of reactive. They're still figuring out what and how the council can actually address this. Some suggestions were new EFPs for exempted fishing permits on some new fisheries that are developing, how emerged new fishermen would enter into these new fisheries, and possibly removing some boundaries to entry to these new fisheries. And it's something that's going to be on the council's radar for the next future, and it's something that they'll probably be contacting with us with some input.
Thanks. Yep. I just had a quick update. I did have a short lunch meeting with Representative Gomberg, similar to essentially an introductory meeting, if you will, with him. Very sort of discussed nothing specific per se, but more how things are going in the port and any of the challenges we're facing and any of the good things that are going on. So it was a very, again, superficial, but opportunity for me to interface with him. Right. We have a calendar for future consideration. Memorial Day just completed the Newport Marathon, June 2nd, special commission meeting, June 4th. The special commission meeting is where we'll be doing our interviews for the new port commission position. Yaquina Bay Yacht Club Summer Solstice, 23rd June. Pacific Northwest Waterways Association Summer Conference, the 25th of June through the 27th. Public hearing and adopt budget resolution. That's the regularly scheduled meeting, I believe, on June 26th.
That's correct.
So, and regularly monthly commission meeting on the 26th as well. Unless anybody has anything else, appreciate everybody sticking around. There's an opportunity for additional public comments if anyone has any. State your name.
David Jiggs, Newport resident. Just a couple brief things here. The only reason why I came tonight is just kind of want to hear what's going on with the electrical at Port Dock 7. My concerns there were that, as a priority project for several years, the middle section of that dock was a priority. We've even submitted grants to have that replaced. My concern was that could electrical work underneath there? Is it something that we're going to have to tear out? Because hopefully, when Connect Oregon decides to issue grants again, we're online to submit that grant, because that old dock there, that center section is on 72-year-old pinnings underneath there. Just a few years ago, we did a quick $20,000 repair on one beam, but that didn't satisfy the problem. That thing's on really shaky ground. So hopefully whatever we do with the electrical. And on the electrical, the other question I had was, you showed the $38,000 original, but then underneath that in the budget on projects, there was $102,000 for electrical connections under the pier, under the hoist. Is there a difference there? I mean, you got $102,000 and $38,000. That's a lot of electrical work on that old pier there. So that's just a question. You don't have to answer it, but it's something to think about because it is in your budget document. And that just kind of brings up a concern is how these projects have changed. Staff recommends them, but they're changing every year. We got 54-year-old fuel tanks over here at the marina. Hey guys, those things, if those things fail, the marina fails. I swear, you're going to lose the marina. You're going to lose so much money if those things fail. We got to start setting money aside in the budget. We're raising fees up. We need some matching funds in that budget, somewhere identified to start going after grants. We don't have any of that in the budget. We need to start looking at that. So that's my concern. With a lot of this is we've raised these rates and fees, but there's nothing in the budget. I mean, we've got all these projects, but a lot of the projects I think are wrong. I think that some of them are coming in and overshadowing others that at one time were the priority. I think you need to reprioritize some of these issues. Because those fuel tanks could cost you they're going to put your marina out of business, okay? And they are old. And we've had problems with them in the past. We've had, the last time we had the fuel line fail, Chris remembers that. That was a big deal. That hurt us bad. And it cost us a lot of money. The other issue is the Swedes dock dredging. Now, the Embarcadero had the same problem. You might want to talk to them, see how they addressed the outfall problem at the Embarcadero, because they had to dredge that out. And I don't know who did that, if that was the city, carried that, or if it was the Embarcadero. I know that they used our dredge disposal site, and it was, they did sample, and which we'll have to do too before we do any dredging there. It'll have to be sampled, qualified, whether it can go upland, at sea or whatever. But before I started assuming the responsibility of dredging that, I'd be in the city discussing it. Because before you dredge it, you know what's causing it. Solve the problem before you dredge it. Because otherwise you haven't done anything. It's going to continue. So work on the solve the problem, and you're dredging at the same time, but definitely take it to the city's doorstep. I wouldn't assume that on your own. So, and it sounds like, I hope that the users group's going to get to look at the rates and fees and budget before it's adopted. I think that's what I'm hearing. I hope so. And rates and fees, I'm representing the District Delta Seed on it. We can only use the terminals. We can't fit in any other part of the port. We depend on port services. I don't have the same concerns that Robert had, or Chris, or anybody else, but I support their concerns because especially Chris, I was on the park commission, he came to us many times on this same issue. And if you got to put up a giant sign down there right on the dock that says, sorry, you got to go home, whatever it takes. But, it's a serious issue, and it's been addressed so many times in the past that I can see it get on it. And also on the seaworthiness of the commercial vessels, when we dealt with that last time, we identified so many vessels, and there was a handful of them, not a lot of them, that didn't fish. And they were at Port Dock 7, and we identified them, and I think part of the scope of that identification was that, they're in spots that larger vessels can't use. They're kind of limited space where they're at, and the port didn't want to lose their revenue. Is basically what it came down to, is they were paying, but did it create any more annual mortgage? No, it wasn't going to create any more annual mortgage because they were small little slips. But if you did want to create more mortgage, take those vessels, move them to one area to where they're out of the way, enlarge those slips, so then you can get bigger boats in there. But that's the way to address it. But we had, in the facilities code, that was looked at, what was seaworthy, and that's what it came down to.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks. Good meeting.
Thanks. Anyone else have any other comments?
Yeah, I got one more.
Please.
Back to the tall ships. I know we were just throwing around our ideas about September, but as like I said, 4 months is when we conduct businesses. It's really around the tuna season. September is one of those months. I mean, it's just 4 months. I mean, all the rest of the year, would be great as another option. Just want to put that out there. So,
Yep. Thank you for that. All right. I think at this point, at 8:38, we'll adjourn the meeting.